Hello and welcome, I'm Tafara Gadamu. One of my guests today, Mel Tawahde, made a film on Haromaya University and the actors involved way back in the early 60s. Sean Evans was born here, and his father was one of the teachers in that college. What is the story all about? Welcome to the program. Tell me, Sean, about your story. Your father moved here way back in 1957, first to Jimma?
1956, to work in the .4 project at Oklahoma State University. Was contracted to work for the Ethiopian government to establish a technical school at Jimma for high school students to educate them and feed them into Alamaya University, now Haromaya University. And my parents were in Ethiopia for 12 years, from 1956 to 1968.
That's very unusual, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's been a unique experience that people are always amazed when they hear me talk about my family.
And you were born in Jimma, right?
That's correct, yes. And so are all my older brothers, too, 3 older brothers, yes.
Born in Jimma. Mm-hmm. So when you moved to Haromaya, how old were you?
I was a newborn, but my brothers were 2, 4, and 6, roughly.
And Mel, your father was the governor of Hararge then?
My father, his name is Fitaurari Tawahde Walde, yes, and he was in Harar as the governor and mayor of the city. And he was very closely involved in the formation of the university back in 1962, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, 9, and my father got transferred to become a senator, and we moved to Addis after that. But before that, we were in Harar. So, yes, my father was involved in the university staff and helping out with what he could. And he also appears that he have learned a lot from the Americans of those days who were involved and dedicated to start the school from scratch. And he had a lot of respect for them and for the kind of things they have done for the people around the agricultural college, whether it be Tredawa, Harar, Jijiga. They got teacher training colleges, and which was really part of the .4 program too, which was started out in Harar, and that made a big difference for people over there. And it gave it, that's the genesis of the Ethiopian higher education system.
Right. So one of the teachers would have been your father, right?
Yes.
What exactly did he do then? I mean, this university was basically at its inception, and there was so much to do there, right?
Oh, yes. It was a well-rounded school, and my father was an engineer and, by training, an agriculturalist also. But his main function was as a physical plant manager. But his contract with Oklahoma State University and Ethiopian government said that he would do whatever needed to be done. And so since he had agricultural engineering training, he had teaching certificates in the U.S. to teach high school, social studies, and sciences. So whatever they needed him to do, he would do, and he was happy to do it.
But agronomy would be at the top of his list, right?
Agronomy is his degree that he has received certification in training, and he did help build a lot of agricultural implements with other staff and students there at Alamaya to improve agricultural techniques. Yes.
So, Mel, I'm sure you've heard so many stories from your father.
I did.
About this kind of connection they had, because it was pretty much solid.
It was. My father really had a lot of respect for the people, in particular Dr. Clyde Kendall, who was the last American president of the university. We have a number of American presidents right up to 1968 when the program ended. So .4 basically was an inception, incepted in 1952, really, when they signed the contract that the Americans were to come to Ethiopia and form a university. But unfortunately, there wasn't enough kids that have done high school. So they said, well, we have to first build a high school. So they went to plan B, and that is to build the JATS, Jima Agricultural and Technical School. And that was where his father, Conrad Evans, got involved very, very strongly. A lot of Ethiopians remember him very fondly, and for the kind of help that he has given to Ethiopians in Ethiopia and in Oklahoma, of course, after he left. And so my father was very, very intrigued, and he was, I just couldn't believe how somebody 8,000 miles away will come and dedicate their lives for the children of Ethiopia.
You know, as one of the pioneer colleges in Ethiopia, Haromaya University trained, most of the graduates from the university went to Oklahoma University, right? To do their second degrees and third degrees and so on. And basically, that's what you're trying to do as part of that connection when you did your film, what, 3 years ago or 2 years ago?
Yes, the film Point 4 was first released in 2012, so 2 years ago. You know, that was part one of Point 4 movie, and that's basically really, for me, the idea was to honor my father, who has so worked hard, and honor those American friends of his that came to Ethiopia, like Dr. Clyde Kendall, who came, and the Evans family, who dedicated their wife, including his mom, Joy Evans, who's just absolutely an expert on Ethiopian spices and Ethiopian culture and Ethiopian dresses and fashion. And so they have taken a lot of pride in being basically Ethiopians, and the kids have really grown as Ethiopians. And as you know, when they went back in 1968, it wasn't only the Evans kids that had a problem readjusting to America, because they were used to this beautiful...
They're born and raised here in
Ethiopia. They lived a free life. They roamed around the campus. There was no restriction for them. And then all of a sudden they go to America. There was a lot of cultural tension. There was a civil rights movement in 1968. And some of them really had a problem adjusting, including Dr. Clyde Kendall's daughter, that needed some counseling to readjust because they really missed home. And some of the kids were crying, and they wanted to come back to Ethiopia. Unfortunately, there was no way for them to come back because the program has ended, and the U.S. government has called it off, and there was going to be no more funding. And so if it wasn't for that, it would have been very difficult for them to readjust to American life.
It was very difficult for you to adjust to American life. In 1968, you basically were born here and grew up as an Ethiopian.
More difficult for my older brothers, but the things that Mel said were exactly correct. They used to have free run of Alamaya campus, Jima campus, and we would on weekends go out and explore the country. And when we returned back to the States, my brother would be driving with my dad, and he would see something interesting, and he would say, "Dad, let's go look at that." And he said, "Oh, we can't, son." And so, "Well, why is that?" He said, "Well, because there's fences here, and that's someone's property, and we can't go on."
No trespassing.
Yeah, no trespassing. And my brother Craig wrote an article for the newspaper about his experiences not understanding the racial tension in the United States, because our first friends were of dark skin color, and we did everything together. We played soccer together. My brothers actually used to get double meals because they would go around visiting the huts of their buddies and getting some Watan injera, and then coming home hopefully to get some more Watan injera. And so yes, it was very difficult for them.
How did you connect?
40 years ago, 45 years later.
45 years later, you kind of connected. And how did that happen? Tell me about that story.
Well, I have
In the search for characters, definitely you will fall for them. But
yes. Yeah, but I've been writing the treatment of the story, trying to capture what I could in terms of the formation of the school. It was a very pleasant story. It was telling the story of the Americans' kindness. It was showing the kindness of Ethiopians and the dedication that they had for their country. And so all those things really made a lot of sense to me. So I wrote the story up in what we call in movie business a treatment. And so when I went to film school, I said, well, I got to find a way to make this into a documentary at least. So the first people that came to mind is, of course, to connect with the Oklahoma Ethiopian Association.
Oh, you have one?
Yes, they have Oklahoma Ethiopia Association. They had it since 19...
I don't know the founding date, but it's been going on for a long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I contacted, Sean was one of the very first person that came to mind because his family has been very, very active, involved. They are the four, they are really the ones who are keeping it together and so forth. So when I told Sean what my intention was to make a documentary, I called him up from Denver, me and a couple of my film crews, and including my son. My oldest son was involved in the production of the movie, and he was doing a lot of research. And we said we're going to come to Oklahoma, and it was a summer day. We arrived there, and temperature was somewhere in the 110 range. It was pretty hot. That would be about 38 to 40 Celsius. It was pretty hot. And so it was a hot day, but we plowed through, and he identified a lot of the people for me to contact, and so we contacted everybody.
A very long time.
I don't have
Definitely some of the interesting characters would have...
They have passed on. Yeah, they have passed on. Some of them passed on, and some of the very critical people really have passed on too, even then already, including his dad. But his dad was okay. I was able to connect with him because he has made an interview with the university. And he has given this presentation about 5 hours long interview on everything from food, from culture, from tension, what they were witnessing about how people live together or they didn't live together, what type of disagreement they would have, and so between the Americans, Ethiopians, and Ethiopians to Ethiopians, and so forth. So he had a lot of educational material. Fortunately for University of Oklahoma,
that you can tap into.
Yeah. And Sean, that was the first DVD that he gave me when I got there, and of course they provided me maybe about 2,000 pictures.
Stills.
Yes, and stills, and 60 millimeters also, which we haven't even developed them yet, and so we're trying to preserve whatever we can. And Oklahoma State has got a lot of material from Ethiopia, and so Sean was very, very instrumental in helping me to get the production going, and we shot for 6 days nonstop. 5 days, and then we
Basically interviews and
yes,
everything, yeah.
And then we kept on shooting in a different city, Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is about, let's say, about 60 miles or 70 miles away from there.
It's 60 miles.
60 miles to Tulsa, and Dr. Ted Vestal was able to round up probably about 5 or 6 people to interview.
But that kind of rekindled memories of and about Ethiopia, how emotional was it for you and your family to kind of get involved in that project, in that movie project?
Yes, being involved in the project that Mel had planned was very emotional. We were very happy to do it, but Mel had contacted us about a month or two after my father had passed away. So feelings were kind of raw and emotional, but we were very happy to do it. We're happy to participate in anything that projects Ethiopia in a positive light. And the ideals that were behind Point 4, the project, just assisting people with human power and sharing knowledge to allow people to lift themselves up.
I'm sure it is quite a challenging task, wasn't it?
It is very challenging. Any film work is very challenging, and when you try to do this something, and we are funding it for my family foundation 100%, and we were not expecting anybody else to participate, and financially all 100% supported by Tawhada Family Foundation. So it brings a lot.
But as far as digging into the past, there is so much.
Very, very big emotional stuff for all of us, because it's a story that in a way was neglected. As Dr. Ted Vestal introduced my movie, he said, Mel has made a movie that we should have made ourselves 50 years ago. Shame on us.
But 50 years ago, you wouldn't get this story.
Well, I mean, but Colorado, I mean,
The plus to it is-
Oklahoma State University should have really attempted to put it together and preserved it for the people, the 300 and plus families that came to Ethiopia. There were 300 and some odd PhD. One of the top educated people with the top training were the only ones that were allowed to come to Ethiopia, because they have to be able to withstand the change in environment. They got to be able to withstand the loneliness. They got to be able to withstand the homesickness, because they're going to be away from Oklahoma and so forth. And so they selected really the toughest of the tough. And so these people were very strong, and their story was slowly but surely disappearing. And of course, we as Ethiopians haven't done a great job of preserving our history, because we have squandered our history and not unable to value what a great nation and great people they are, and the kind of participation that was already there before anybody started in Africa. Ethiopia was the first country that was recognized by the United States as one of the only countries they wanted to be involved. So that's one of the reasons that Ethiopia was in the forefront. And so they provided us the best education, and we have to attempt to try and put the story together before it was too late. So thank God we were able to get a hold of the majority of the people, and they've given us an incredible insight into the story. It was just refreshing. It was beautiful. It was just like it happened yesterday.
There are plenty of things to take from Ethiopia, right? I'm sure you've been discussing this with your parents and everything, you know? Is that a fair...
Sure. I mean, I feel extremely fortunate of my history, because it has allowed me an entirely different perspective than the average American has on the world. I've always felt more worldly, more attuned with international affairs, more receptive to people from other countries, more receptive to other cultures. It impacted me tremendously, even though I left at the age of 4. And I know that was the same for other families that were there. They were just had an entirely different perspective than the typical American child. It's a tendency in America to be America-centric and focus inward on itself. But the children of those families that participated in that are very international.
So color blind, basically.
Oh, yes. I've lived in other places. I've lived in Texas, and more of my friends were Hispanic than they were white. It not on purpose. It just worked out that way. But my dad continued to be associated with international projects, because later, after returning to the States, he became Associate Director of International Programs at Oklahoma State University. So we always had international people coming into our house. In fact, we kind of adopted an El Salvadorian student. The conflict war was taking place there, and his friends were met by Army officials on the side of the road, and they took them to a house and shot both of his friends, but left him alive to tell the message of don't mess with the government. And his parents took him that night and took him to the United States, and almost immediately contacted our family, or somehow they got contacted by our family, and we took him in, and we treat him as a brother. There was no hesitation in that. My dad was probably had his credit extended so far out, because he would sign anybody's, people who were intelligent, good, hardworking people. They just needed someone to believe in them and co-sign a loan. He was more than happy to do that. And so it had a tremendous impact. You can't even imagine.
So that's what you were able to explore when you did this movie.
That's exactly right, Tafara. They are just absolutely kind people, and people in the Midwest, they have got that tendency anyways, whether it's Nebraska, Oklahoma, or Colorado. And I'm a little biased because I'm from Colorado. And so they are very kind, and they share what they have. And they were able to help a lot of people, in Ethiopians and many other refugees and struggling people that would otherwise nobody will pay attention to. And so it takes a very special kind of people to be able to pay attention to people that are not doing so great, and then turn around their chances and make things better for them and so forth. Now they are witnesses that the people that they have helped have become doctors, have become one of the top scientists, have become big business people. And so they've been paid the rewards right here on Earth. And so it is really gratifying to see people like this. It gives you a new hope on humanity. And that's what I was able to try to explore, what it did for our people and our country.
And Sean, what brings you back here? I mean, this is your first time, right, in 45 years?
That's correct. Well, knowing Mel, and just a way to honor the legacy of my father. And Mel was going to be here showing his movie, but he's also doing research for the establishment of a great enterprise, a great East African adventure company to bring economy into a targeted industry of the government that they've recognized as tremendous potential for increasing the economy. And Mel's looking for any ways that he can help his countrymen, and this was identified, and it looks like he has a fantastic website, and I can't wait to go look at some of the cities that will be offered in that tour package. And it was just a way for me to reconnect and have more power of the stories that my parents have always told me, and all the pictures that I've seen. And I was one of the younger kids in the program, so I don't have my memories are very vague, and it was the right time to be here and to help Mel in any way that we can, and to help Ethiopia in any way that we can.
And it's all about travel to Ethiopia. Go and visit Ethiopia. That's what you're going to do.
Exactly right, because, again, the traveling business is also very tight. The economy was very bad in 2008, so one of the things that would get thrown out is traveling outside, especially in faraway places like this, which are sometimes inconvenient, a lot of injection, you have to take vaccinations, and people are leery about those, and they're worried about the vicinity that it's next to Somalia, and the conflict around the region. A lot of Americans are not really very well versed in exactly what it is, or that Egypt, for example, is now impacting what will happen in Africa and so forth. So in this type of high anxiety situation, you have to differentiate yourself, that A, you'll be safe, B, you'll have some fun, and C, you'll be able to see some historical places, and you will impact the people in a positive way. So it requires a concerted and very protected effort to change people's mind, to participate, because the younger generation of Americans and most Western Europeans are being brought up thinking about Ethiopia in light of famine and destruction and revolution. And so in order to change that deeply ingrained mindset, it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a work of our children and our children's children to convince the rest of us that there is some redeemable value.
Well, you have a great market out there. Good luck, and thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have.